Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon.
I'm Florin Lazerka. I'm today's white hat. I'm the defender.
My name is Martin Zuzek. I'm the bad guy today.
Ooh.
So the topic or the theme of our session today is inspired by the spy versus the spy. So we discussed what's the best format to present it, and we decided you cannot build good defenses if you don't know what the attackers are doing. So what we are going to do today is that we will explain to you what the bad guys are doing, how they are organized, what are the techniques they are using, and for each of these parts, Florin is going to talk about the best defenses, and what we will do for each of the sections or stages of the attack is we will tell you what attackers are doing, what defenders are doing, what's the one key takeaway, one thing that you should remember, and finally, what are the Citrix technologies that can help you to prevent that attack from happening?
So if we start thinking about ransomware and breaking the ransomware kill chain, let's look at ransomware historically, right? So the first documented case of ransomware was from 1989. It was actually developed by a biology professor, a biologist. It wasn't even a programmer, right? So when we look at the distribution method, it was snail mail, 20,000 floppy disks were mailed through the mail, and there was a plan to send an initial 2 million. We're looking at the payload. It was an autoexec.bat change, where after 90 reboots, all the files on the C drive were just renamed. So no encryption, not really sophisticated, right? But still messed up your day. And then when we look at the payment, it asked for $189, which is, you know, the inflation rate's not that bad at this point. $189, but sent to a PO box in Panama. Now, if someone knows what happened in '89 in Panama, there was a little invasion, and they probably never got that money anyway, right? So the outcome or the finale is that Dr. Joseph Popp was declared mentally insane. If you read some of his work, you probably agree with that. And then you know, he was arrested by Scotland Yard and charged with blackmail. So flash forward 30 years, and we're looking at last year, WannaCry, right? The largest ransomware infection at that point. The distribution way was email, attachments, and we're looking at even automated distribution through industrial control systems, right? So big difference in 30 years. When we're looking at the payload, we're looking at the alleged exploit from the NSA, external blue. There was a backdoor involved, double pulsar. We're talking about encryption. We're talking about worming through the network. The payment was done anonymously through Bitcoin, my favorite, thank you. And we're looking at the outcome where nobody was really caught, right? There's a suspicion on nation states doing it, but it still occasionally strikes, right? We still get organizations that are getting hit. So a big difference within the evolution of ransomware in terms of payment and so forth. And when you see that really in this 24-hour snapshot of May 16th of last year, so almost about a year ago during the Mother's Day timeframe, right? So 150, at this point, about 150,000 organizations, workstations hit up to a peak of about 300,000 in a lot of countries, right? So that is a huge difference in the spread and the effectiveness of ransomware. So some of the emails we may get, some of the stuff that we may see in the email, phishing emails, some of the attacks that come out of the bad guys. Yeah, if you look at it, you're like, yeah, these guys are not pretty smart, right? Look, they're sending out emails with fictitious Nigerian astronauts that are stuck in space, stuck on the Soviet space station. Like, I'm not gullible. I'm not going to believe this. What do you think, Martin?
Yeah, I have completely different opinion. So this is one of the insights from kind of the other side perspective. If you want to understand why are you looking at email like this, what you have to understand is if I'm sending the email, the first one that I send, that's fully automated. That doesn't require any work from me at all. As soon as you hit reply and you respond to this email, it requires a lot of manual work from me because I have to reply to you. You get back to me, I tell you where you send my money, you ask me how much, I tell you all of your money, and so on. It's a couple of emails that go back and forth. Now, what I do is, let's say that I change this email that it's much more believable. It's no longer about the first African astronaut that was forgotten in the space station. It's something that most of you will be able to believe. What happens to me is that, let's say that half of you are going to respond to this email, at least asking like, what is this, who are you, what are you telling me? And let's say that I will need to exchange 3 emails with you until I either identify you as a victim or you just realize this is scam and you stop responding to me. So let's say that I increase the success rate to 50% and I exchange 3 emails with every single person that responds to me. Now what we do is that once you put the real numbers into this equation, you realize that, for example, the Rattackers botnet, which is the biggest one today, is sending about 100 million emails every single day. So if I would make this email too believable, I would need to send about 150 million emails every single day that I would need to do manually because I cannot automate it. So what's the smart thing to do? What if in the first email that's fully automated, I will actually build the IQ test? What if I will be able to sort out the people that are potential victims from the people that will figure out this is scam? And this is what I'm doing here. I know that whoever is going to respond to this email, I can take the money out of him because he's going to fall into whatever story I tell him. So same content, but we are just looking from 2 different perspectives. For Florian, this is very dumb. For me, this is actually very smart, what we are doing here. So let me talk to you a bit about the state of security industry, how the security industry looks like today. And I'm going to talk about it from my perspective. I don't care about your antivirus companies and traditional security. No, I'm talking about the bad guys. What you have to realize, and that's the big change that we see, is that big majority of security breaches today is financially motivated. So it's something that I can do for a full-time living. So for example, the city where I was born, as an IT architect, the average salary 2 days ago when I checked was about $10,000 per year. We have the gangs from that part of Europe that are making about $7 million every 6 months. So from this perspective, of course this is big industry and this is becoming much more organized and much more professional than before because there's a lot more money and finances are the primary motivation for all these attacks now. What this means is that I'm actually willing to invest and I actually start thinking about the ROI for my ransomware campaigns and I'm getting much more organized. And what you can, for example, find now is that you have consultancy companies that will tell me if I infect this company, what's the maximum ransom I can get before they are required to report it to the executive team. So I can actually pay someone who's going to tell me this is the maximum you can ask for. And they will pay it right away. Now, when I talk about industry, yes, there are actually ransomware service providers. So on the dark web at this moment, we have over 6,000 marketplaces where you can buy everything you want. You can buy the complete, fully customized ransomware kit, or you can buy just the specialized software pieces if you want to. And there's almost 50,000 these ransomware components that you can actually buy. You can buy small bits for 50 cents up to the level where you can get your own dedicated to you only ransomware that no one else is using. Now, what I'm going to show you here is, so this is an example of how it looks like on the dark web. What I'm showing you here is called Raspberry Ransomware as a Service, RAS. And what are the technical skills that I need here? Pretty much nothing. All I do is that I just purchase new package, I choose which membership I want. I want to have the gold, platinum for the next 36 months. I want to have it for 2 months. I pay, click, within 5 minutes I have my own ransomware that's ready for distribution. And this is just one of the many, many, many. And we are seeing much increased competition now where many of these ransomware providers started providing flat rate of $39 where you get all the updates, you just prepay for the whole year, and so on and so forth. So when I say industry, this is really industry. Now think about the WannaCry. So each ransomware actually consists of multiple software modules. Some of them are running on Windows, some of them are running in cloud. And that's the way how I like to think about it. So the WannaCry, for example, they decided there is a really good payload, the Eternal Blue, the 0-day, that we can use. So that's what we start with. In the past, what would happen next is they would take this and they would spend 2 years trying to infect enough machines that will be used for distribution. That's not how it works today. If I need to care about the distribution, I'm going to rent some of the big botnets. I'm going to hire one for 24 hours to do campaign for me. Now, if you are still questioning when I talk about industry, one interesting number here is 97% of all the spam worldwide originates from 2 botnets only. So they pretty much own the whole market and everyone is just renting the services from them. If I'm talking about the command and control, this is the call home infrastructure and so on. I'm just going to the dark web and I will just buy one of those that are already prepared and are professionally done and are being updated and they just work. For encryption, the encryption module of my ransomware, I'm just going to use one of the open source projects. Why not? And for the payment, again, I'm just going to pay percentage of the profit to someone else to take care of the payments, including all the additional services. I might want to use the Bitcoin mixers. So if you send me the payment, I'm actually going to send it somewhere else and I'm going to get completely different Bitcoins in return. So it's completely untraceable. At the end, I can build the ransomware using new 0-day with minimum programming skills within a day, maybe today. So this is very different than it used to be in the past. And as I said, it is really becoming professional industry.
So what is the state of the defender? Well, admittedly, we're weaker, right? So there are going to be 1.8 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs within the next 5 years. The barrier to entry is higher, right? So instead of being able to have a low barrier to entry by just doing ransomware as a service and picking up pieces from the internet and building it, the barrier to entry to security is fairly high. You have to understand applications, you have to understand networking. That's a cumulative experience required to get into security. And so when you see employers, 70% of them are looking to hire more cybersecurity experts, right? So colleges and institutions are trying to, starting even in middle school and high school, they're starting to build the next level of cybersecurity space rangers, right? The median salary as a business challenge is $124,000 per year, and it keeps on growing, right? When you're looking at that, even though that's a fairly hefty sum, compare it to 7 million every 6 months, the incentive or the force to drive you to the dark side is actually pretty high. And then we look at emerging technologies like AI and machine learning, but I have a hint that Martin's also looking at as well. I have a clue. I think you're looking at it too, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of the thing that we see in security all the time, where we are saying what we are building now is going to solve the security problem once and for all. So how many of you are actually expecting that only the good guys are going to use machine learning and AI? Okay, that's good. So we actually have people that, yes, understand the problem. And I will include, in the rest of the presentation, I will include few samples of machine learning that we are seeing the bad guys are using as well.
So we look at the ransomware components and, initially we started saying, this is a little bit overwhelming. I need to have all these technologies and understanding of all the components and block against all of them. It's a big elephant to chew, but normally when we have a big problem, we try to break it up. So let's break it up and see, all right, there's a payload section that we can defend against. There's a distribution and botnet area that we can defend against. There's command and control. So this is why it's good to understand all the components in this kill chain. There's the encryption and decryption components, and there's the payment. So if we look at disrupting this kill chain, disrupting this series of escalating attacks early enough, and the earlier the better, you can actually block this whole attack. And once you break a component of the cyber kill chain for ransomware, you can effectively stop the attack.
There's actually one good example where the Rattackers I was talking about, the botnet, they had a software bug in it which brought it down for 3 weeks, and the worldwide spam distribution went down by 70% from one day to another. So it's really, if you think about all this as a chain, if you can take out one piece of the chain, the whole attack falls apart. Now, what we've done is that we actually thought, why don't we analyze all the different stages that every single modern ransomware infection is going through? Why don't we think about it as a chain, and then why don't we start thinking about what the attackers are doing and what defenders can do to actually break that chain? Because one of the biggest rules in security is you want to have multi-layered defense, in-depth security. You don't want to have just one security element that you are going to rely on. So that's why we came with something that we are calling Ricky chain. This is pretty much every single ransomware infection today is going through these different stages. The 5 stages that we defined, first one is the recon. This is the target acquisition. Second one is initial infection. So that's the initial infection vector to your company. Command and control. This is calling back home for further instructions and what to do. Expansion. This is where it's trying to spread to as many machines as possible around it. And finally, extortion. This is where we are actually trying to get money out of you, the final stage. So the first one is target acquisition. And we see 2 different methods that are being used. The first one we already talked about. It's a spam, huge volume. The expectation is that maybe one in a million people is actually going to click on this. The second one is spear phishing, which is much more harder because you need to spend a lot of time actually working on this, but success rate is much higher. We actually have like different shades of the spear phishing. The top level is called the whale phishing, which are spear phishing campaigns that are specifically targeted against executives, and they easily spend 1 month just working on one email. So these are extremely professional emails that usually you don't really hear about. Now, I was talking about machine learning before. Imagine what would happen if you will be able to combine these 2 methods together. So you will keep the volume of the spam, but you will make every single spam email completely believable, specifically targeted against you, and so on. So this is one of the best examples where offenders can use machine learning and AI, just making this labor-intensive work with spear phishing and automate it. Build the algorithms that will be able to, for example, read your Twitter feed and understand who are your friends, what are the topics you are talking about, and just making sure that it can craft message specifically against you. Now, if you think this is more like a science fiction, that blue link will take you to one experiment that was done by security researchers. What they've done is that they built the Twitter bot, or the Twitter engine, where you could give any Twitter handle. It will understand what that person is interested in, who are the friends and followers, what is he working on, what are the latest announcements in that field, and it will be able to craft specific tweet only for that person, including the link that will take him to the website that's just counting like how many people clicked on it. They had 30% success rate, which is a huge number, and that was just experiment where there was no financial motivation for them, nothing. It was just, let's spend a few days trying to build this and see how it works.
So from a defender side, we're looking at controls. What logical and technical controls can we put in place to reduce and mitigate? So we're looking at user awareness and training, right? Every global security office should have training and user awareness, whether it's putting email tags on your email saying this is from an outside company, this is potential spam, potential phishing, but it's also user awareness training and understanding, especially when we're looking at whaling and phishing, and is that your social media existence, your profile is readable by a lot of people, and it may not even be yours, it may be your children's, right? So a good example is, a CEO had a daughter who broke her arm, and that was, she posted it on Facebook. that person was cataloged, and then there was a specific email that was sent to the CEO saying, hey, this is your daughter's medical record, and now there's a level of trust that's built in that email saying, hey, this person understands or knows me, I'm going to open it up, and that was actually a ransomware attack. So it's awareness in terms of there's active reconnaissance and passive reconnaissance, where people are using open source intelligence tools to make a profile, especially when you're looking at targeted, really highly targeted attacks. And then from the technical side, we're looking at putting email and proxy filters, right? Protecting those incoming emails. I think we blow up thousands of emails a day that look false and look that they're actually attacks.
One thing. So as I said, for all these stages, we are going to have one thing that we would like to highlight, we would like you to remember. So if you think about it, there is common misunderstanding. Almost all the attacks, about 90 to 95% that we see, are coming from compromised websites. So it's not as the attacker is not going to create one website and use it that you can just blacklist and update the blacklist every month. No, what they are going to do is that they are going to use the compromised sites, and the average lifespan for these sites is going to be 4 to 8 hours. So what I'm going to do is, if I infect, let's say, your server, I'm going to use it for the crypto mining. Then 4 months later, I will turn it into a machine that is sending the spam. It will do it for 2 hours. Then I turn it into crypto mining again. Then a couple of months later, I use it as command and control server again for 1 hour. Then I turn it back. So this is very hard and almost impossible to case. Now, pretty much everything we are doing is not marketing. It's more like how it really works. And one thing that I would like to show you is how many of you trust the data from Google? Yeah, not a lot of people. So this is Google Transparency Report, where Google is actually analyzing all the traffic. The red line that you see, these are the attacks that originate from the compromised website, the website that was completely fine 1 hour ago, and now it started sending out the payloads. The blue line that's almost invisible, these are the designated attack websites. So if there's one thing we want you to remember about this stage, it's almost all the attacks are coming from compromised websites, having static defenses like a blacklist that's being updated every single month. That just doesn't really work anymore.
Oh, a little crash.
Looks like.
We'll be back. So when we're looking at an architecture, we're going to show a slide on a Citrix architecture and introduce the concept. So we have end users on one side. They're usually connecting through some sort of gateway. There's a storefront where we're aggregating the applications. We know all this. Now, we've done this for a number of customers where they publish in the internet browser, right? We know it's probably one of the most published applications available, and for a specific reason, not for performance, not for scalability, but for security. And the goal here is you're keeping your internet traffic away from your endpoints. What we're doing here is we're publishing an internet browser and also publishing in a separate farm, separate site, co-located somewhere else potentially, an intranet browser as well. So it's like a confidential network and then a non-confidential network. And that traffic goes out through a forward proxy, right? So when we look at a forward proxy, we're looking at checking for compromised websites, checking for websites that are within a certain filter, checking for reputation. So we're looking at the Secure Web Gateway, or SWIG as we call it, our partnership with Netstar that looks at compromised websites, that checks the list of compromised websites every few hours, and that's configurable. We're looking at those compromised websites that Martin is sending his loads up to, his work, and those websites, those websites may not live for a very long time, so we need to catch them quickly before they go do something else and offload to something else. And we'll come back to this diagram, so we'll see as we add more additional components for protection.
Okay, so let's talk about stage 2. So I'm done with target acquisition. What I'm doing now is that I'm going to infect the first machine. That's my first step into a company. And what I'm actually willing to do here is, again, for me it is business, so I don't mind investing some money because I know I'm going to get them back. So what I might decide to do is that I'm going to buy one of the zero-day exploits. I know it's going to be expensive, it's going to cost me maybe $50,000, but I'm planning to make 1 million, so it's just investment. What you are seeing in front of you, this is not the pricing for the black market, that's usually higher. This is the white market, so this is the official market for exploits, and what you see is that the prices for single exploit can go all the way up to $300,000 per exploit. And this is more traditional. Once you add to the picture the mobile operating system, we go all the way up to $1.5 million per exploit for iOS operating system. So again, important thing to remember, this is big business and there's a lot of money in it, and it's going to get worse than it is today because it's still being professionalized step by step. What attackers are also going to do here is that they will do everything they can to hide the malicious payload or the content. We saw it about a week ago when there's a new way how they can execute the code from the Word document without using any macros, just by using the object linking. So you open the Word document, no macros enabled, even still it's going to execute the code. And once it will become common practice to block the macros in the Office documents or to require the signed macros, that's when the bad guys will have really the motivation to start looking for alternative ways.
So from the defender side, patching is critical, right? As soon as there is a 0-day that's been out in the news, and a patch is available, that time to have it patched needs to be reduced as fast as possible. And that's usually prioritizable, especially on the browser, right? Because it is that one application, the browser and the email client, that usually just have direct internet access. And things that need to be blocked at the gateway, the email gateway. We're looking at blocking all executables. At your applications, look at blocking macros and scripts that run within the applications. When you're looking at the browser itself, we're looking at blocking active content, JavaScripting, Java tools, a lot, depending on the scenario, and that's something you can do with Citrix, have different browsers for different use cases with different tool sets enabled. And then typically we're looking at some traditional perimeter-based security doesn't work. The reason why is because you're already letting them in. You're letting them in within your perimeter. They're accessing those applications. And this is when we have to look at, to see that when we're looking at these breaches, where are they coming from?
So this is one thing to remember about this one. 90+% of security breaches originates in email client or the web client. And that's why if you think about the keynote that you saw at the beginning, the Citrix browser, the embedded one, and the ability to redirect traffic to secure browser and so on, that's where you can prevent these initial infections. Now, this is not marketing BS, and what I did a couple of days is that I had a look at the data breach investigations report, where they analyzed about 50 million on-the-wire detections of the malware. And when I put together all the numbers from that source, it's more like 99% of the security breaches started with email or browser traffic. So this is where you want to focus your defenses.
So when we're looking at an environment, and this is not really new, this concept, but some of the tools that we have and the partnerships we have really make it much better. We built this in consulting for a customer 10 years ago, but when we're looking at how do we actively take those applications, the email client, the internet browser, segment them, put them in a special security zone, build them on top of a platform with like XenServer and Bitdefender that looks at techniques of the malware, looks at the way that it works, whether it's a buffer overflow, or whether it's a remote code execution, whether it's using PowerShell, whether it's using memory-based fileless attacks. Like, this is how you build a resilient environment. And when you're looking at concentrating the email client or the web browser, using web app security and locking down that application even further really builds on top of that as well.
Okay, let's move to the next stage. That's command and control. Your first machine is infected. Now it's calling home. Now it's asking for instructions. Now it's asking for additional payload. Now it's asking, what do I do next? The way how this is usually visualized is you have attacker. He's going to have a bunch of command and control servers, and they are going to control the millions of machines that were compromised. That's not how it works anymore for a couple of years. Today, this is usually completely decentralized, and it's more peer-to-peer network where each of compromised machines can become the command and control server. So it's not easy to just block access to few servers. We are talking about millions of potential CNC servers. The Tor, the onion routing, is being used to make this completely anonymous and untraceable. And about 70% of the command and control traffic is fully encrypted today. And this number is increasing pretty much every day. So within a couple of months, it will be always just encrypted and nothing else.
When we look at the defender side, a lot of times we focus on the gateway in, but we don't focus on the gateway out, on what's going out. We don't focus on whether encrypted traffic is valid, whether we're using blacklists or whitelists. Sometimes it's just wide open on the exit. So command and control servers, the ones that send the commands to do the encryption, that transfer the keys, the ones that monitor and control the crypto jacking and crypto mining, sometimes they're left wide open. So we need to have those outbound barriers as well to not only protect against the command and control, but also protect it against data exfiltration, which is a later step.
One thing to remember, command and control servers are very hard, if not often impossible to trace. They are completely anonymous, using encrypted traffic, and they are using the hybrid peer-to-peer networks. Now, interesting part is we are expecting very soon to start seeing the HiveNets. What is HiveNet? HiveNet is just the botnet that's infused with AI and machine learning. So you end up with millions of machines that can actually plan and execute the attacks without any human interactions. Again, if you think about the slide where I was talking about industry, you can say machine learning requires special skills and so on. That's why they have marketplaces and industry. So you just need someone who is willing to sell the framework that everyone else is using. So this will be interesting times.
Outbound traffic, same thing. Web filtering, we're talking about using a secure web gateway, a forward proxy. I'm going to speed it up because we're counting down. Go into the expand phase.
Okay, expansion. This is actually a huge change that we've seen in 2017, and most people don't even realize it. Before this, ransomware was pretty much infecting individual machines. What WannaCry did is that it started infecting the whole companies. That's a huge shift. That's for me personally the biggest difference with the WannaCry. So what we are seeing here is that after the first machine was infected, the ransomware will try to spread to all machines around it. Again, number one big change is that we are talking about infecting companies, not individual machines, which brings, it could be the whole new presentation just talking about things like volume discounts that are being offered and negotiation best practices and so on. Number two, what we are seeing now is you infect the machine, you do kind of the blast radius where you try to infect all the machines around it. This includes machines that you don't even know that could be infected by ransomware, medical devices, IoT devices, and so on, because we are using the new category of exploits. What's going to happen next is that the next generation will start using the clone phishing. The idea is very simple. How do I spread to different country, to different region, to different department? I'm going to have a look at your Outlook. I'm going to check your sent folder. I'm going to see all the emails that you sent in the last 24 hours. I'm going to filter out emails with Office attachment only. I'm going to download all these attachments. I'm going to add something like _version2. I'm going to inject macro into this Office documents, and I'm going to send them to the same people as it was sent before with commentary something like, I made some small changes, please see the latest version. How many of you would fall for this? I would, because I'm getting these emails like every day from colleagues, and this is pretty much impossible to actually prevent from happening.
So the name of the game is lateral movement. containing that blast radius, right? Creating your networks and creating your security architecture to limit the spread. You've already been infected, you want to limit that spread. Using network segmentation, using kind of the concepts of least privilege, that means users, services, machines should not be able to go from the point of sale all the way to core network, from the air conditioner to the back end. Segment your IoT devices, especially at home. Segment your IoT devices on a different network. Have them separate so if they do get infected, the impact is reduced. And then define and train these emergency response scenarios. You want to stop this quickly. So you're giving more time by reducing the impact radius. And then also you are having a faster response time as well. The training is involved. The one thing here, Martin?
One thing. And this is, by the way, a good topic. People keep asking me, what is Citrix doing with security? And the way how I like to explain it is that in security you have protection, traditional antivirus. This is something that we don't really do. But then you have different pillars of security because you have visibility and you have control. And that's where Citrix technologies are actually really good and can really help with the security. So when you are in this expansion state, it's already too late for prevention. You've been already infected, the infection spreads. All this is about is containment and control and being able to actually keep it under control the whole time.
So when you build a Citrix environment similar to the one we were just talking about, expand it. Segment your applications that are sensitive, have data that is sensitive, build them out in separate network segments as well so that should your HR application get infected or your zone that has HR application, it doesn't go to your finance application, it doesn't go to your medical locations. We're talking about industries, and I was speaking to a customer this week. They're covered both by PCI compliance and by HIPAA compliance, right? On one part they have medical records and patient records. On the other side they have credit cards. You have this lockdown environment so that the traffic does not bleed between them is very important for applications. So as I mentioned before, we've spent a lot of time building around scalability and performance. It's time to start thinking about building around security.
Okay, and we are at the final stage. This is where my goal is to actually take the money, extortion and exfiltration phase. Now, one quick note, when we talk about ransomware, what pretty much everyone imagines is the ransomware is about encrypting the files and then asking for money to provide you with ability to get them back. But there are kind of different flavors to the attacks that can demand a ransom, leakerware, and so on, and you need to be prepared for all of them. So the traditional ransomware with encryption of files, this is pretty much legacy technology, I would say today. What most of the attackers are doing today is the cryptojacking. The reason why is that they can actually make much more money if they don't just require one-time payment, but if they can stay undetected for months and just use all your machines for crypto mining. It's much, much better business model for them. The next example is extraction of data. There are many people, I'm not going to ask, that pretty much rely on the backups as the strategy against the ransomware. So that's why attackers are looking for other techniques. What if I can use the technique where your backups are completely useless? What if I steal your data, and then what if I'm going to blackmail you, asking if you don't pay, this goes to the internet. The big problem with this method in the past was always it's very labor intensive because you need to siphon through the data, you need to find the sensitive one. Anyone know the answer for the attacker to this one? Machine learning. So machine learning is another example where this can be fully automated and you can have algorithms that will be able to find and extract the data that's really valuable for the company without you doing anything. Finally, the last type that we are seeing is using denial of access. So in March 2018, that was the biggest DDoS attack in history against the GitHub. It peaked about 1.7 terabytes of data per second. That's 2.5 higher than the previous record. What most people don't know is that the packets that were actually sent and bounced from the GitHub included message saying, pay 50 Monero to this wallet and we are going to stop this attack right now. So even though it was DDoS, it was financially motivated actually. And now the interesting thing is that for the attackers, they can start combining these methods. So I'm going to infect your machines, let's say 1,000 machines. I'm going to install the crypto mining software on all of them. I'm going to run undetected for 6 months because most of the security breaches takes months to be discovered. Then if there is a moment when I know that you found me, you know that I'm on the network, what I will do is that within those 6 months, I'm going to run my algorithms for the data extraction, so I have enough materials. Once I know that you are trying to get rid of me, I'm going to switch all these machines to self-destructive mode, encrypt all the file, prevent the company from working. So I'm getting money from the crypto mining, then I'm going to demand the ransom from you, one-time ransom. Then after this is done, I'm going to blackmail you with the data that I stole from the company. And final step that I'm going to do is that meanwhile, it's a technique that was presented in 2017, I believe. I'm going to infect your IoT devices and I'm going to run the DDoS attack against your own infrastructure from within the company. So I'm going to combine all of this and I'm just always going to ask you, can you please pay? Can you please pay? Can you please pay? And the worst thing that can happen to you is that I can come back the next month if you cannot find how did I get in the first place.
So we want to recover that data, right? But first we need to get rid of the infection, right? So we don't want a maintenance subscription service for ransomware that keeps coming back. I don't know what we call it though. One, we want to recover from that data, recover from the infection, recover from the data, and also make sure your data is backed up off network as well, because there is ransomware that targets the actual backup itself. It goes after volume copies, it goes after backup network appliances as well. Try decryption. There are some resourceful people out there on the white hat side that are finding flaws within ransomware and creating the decryption tools. And last but not least, you have to do a business decision, business risk. Do you continue funding these criminal organizations and paying the ransom? But at what cost? Maybe your business requires it because a day or 7 days or 10 days of being down is not feasible. When we're looking at the backup though?
One thing only to remember, backup should not be your only plan. And let me repeat it. Backup should not be your only plan, and we see this especially with small companies.
So accelerated version of this, we got 2 minutes. Share file, back up your data, recover your data, volume and version control, checking for ransomware extensions, checking for malware, looking at other services that we use to check with partners that checks for the malware signatures as well. Single image management, revert an infected machine to a previous state so that we know that you're getting rid of the infection, and then back up your data as well, or recover your data as well. And when we're looking at the kill chain as a summary, right, so the recon is that initial targeting of the victim, the initial infection, looks for one machine, you get in there, you go out and pull your directions. What's the game of the day? It may be, like Martin said, today may be ransomware, tomorrow might be crypto mining. Expand, filter out through the network, extort. But we have solutions at every step of the level where the layers that we can actually look at preventing a lot of these, right? So preventing recon with secure web gateway, preventing the infections, preventing the command and control, secure browser, secure email, web app security, hypervisor introspection, all the stuff that we covered on. This is a good picture slide, by the way. And then expanding, secure zones, hypervisor introspection, and at the extortion level, having the ability to recover from an attack, as well as having the ability to prevent further attacks as well, so keeping them out. And this is what it looks like at the end, another good picture slide, when we look combining all the technologies from access management to protection of the application and protection of the data and protection of the web traffic going outbound. So we do have a couple predictions in the last couple of minutes. Ransomware will continue going and it'll get smarter. We also see cryptojacking as seeing an accelerated growth as well, and we had a whole presentation on cryptojacking. Feel free to ask me about it later. We'll see it targeted against Linux and web servers, targeted against data servers, exfiltration, denial attacks, data extortion, and it'll be destructive data extortion as well, where data will be destroyed, total war type of scenario.
Okay, and as I mentioned a couple of times, you are going to see AI machine learning being used by the bad guys. It's mostly going to be hidden, but it's going to be there and it's going to make this completely different playground. With that being said, thank you very much for the journey that you took with us. I hope you learned something new or something interesting today. If there's one thing that I would like to ask you about, please rate the session and even better, leave us some feedback. I always go through all the feedback, what you liked, what you didn't like, how could we make this deck better. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the show.